President-elect Donald Trump is renewing his threats to take control of both Greenland and the Panama Canal, and he's refusing to rule out using military force. Listen to Trump at a news conference earlier today.
Can you assure the world that as you try to get control of these areas, you are not going to use military or economic coercion?
No, I can't assure you. You're talking about Panama and Greenland. No, I can't assure you on either of those two. But I can say this. We need them for economic security. The Panama Canal was built for our military.
You will not use military.
I'm not going to commit to that now. It might be that you'll have to do something. Look, the Panama Canal is vital to our country.
I want to bring in our chief national security analyst, Jim Sciutto. Jim, what are you hearing from your sources after this dramatic statement from the president-elect?
Listen, there was a tendency in Trump's first administration to dismiss comments like this from Trump as bluster, and many of them turned out to be. This time around, I think it would be unwise to do that. And when I speak to people close in Trump's circle, and I ask them, is he serious about the Panama Canal? Is he serious about Greenland? And how far is he willing to go? They say he is quite serious, and that he frames it, and you hear it from his advisors as well. They frame this as a national security issue in Panama. They allege Chinese control there. In Greenland, they talk about the importance of it to the Arctic and elsewhere. They describe it in national security terms, necessitating hard action, which might begin with economic pressure, to say to Panama and Denmark, a treaty ally of the United States, as a fellow member of NATO.
Greenland is part of Denmark.
Greenland is a territory of Denmark with its own elected leaders.
And Denmark is a NATO ally.
It's a NATO ally, fought alongside the U.S. in Afghanistan on hard frontline duty and lost many dozens of soldiers there. But that it may begin with economic pressure, Trump saying, if you don't give me what I want, I will impose serious backbreaking sanctions on you, Panama, or on you, Denmark. And if that doesn't work, you heard the president-elect there say himself that he might very well order military action. When I ask folks inside Trump's world whether that is serious, they say, not right now, but they're not taking it off the table. So I think it's important not to dismiss this, to take it quite seriously. And the other point I'll make, Wolf, is this, that when I ask folks in that world what his vision is, they describe it as a kind of Trump-Monroe doctrine. We got to go back to our high school history here, but the Monroe doctrine was in effect that the U.S. rules in the Western Hemisphere. And that's where the Panama Canal is. That's where Greenland is. That's where Canada is. And that he's going to push, flex his muscle here, and that he's not going to tolerate any interference or any limitations on that. And to your point, this would involve pressuring treaty allies of the United States, either economically or militarily, to give the U.S. what it wants. That's an enormous break with decades of bipartisan tradition.
Enormous indeed. All right, Jim Sciutto, thank you very much. I want to bring in Trump's former defense secretary, Mark Esper. Mark, thanks very much for joining us. You previously told me you thought Trump's rhetoric about Greenland was a negotiating tactic. But hearing him now, do you take this more seriously than when he floated this idea originally back in 2018?
Well, I do think we should take his words seriously, the words of all leaders seriously. He's just continues to add more detail to it and flex his muscle, as Jim just said, even more. What's surprising of all the issues that the new administration is going to face in the next 2 weeks when they come in, that these would be out there being discussed for the last couple of weeks, let alone on the list at all. I mean, we're looking at a hot war in Europe with Russia invading Ukraine. Everybody's waiting to see what the Trump administration approach will be there. We have ongoing conflict in the Middle East. There's a curiosity, again, how much Trump will support Israel, and maybe more importantly in that region, how we will deal with Iran, which may be pursuing a nuclear weapon. And then you have the broader issue of China's ongoing approach trying to take the United States down in different areas. I think, frankly, that's the common thread that ties together both Greenland and Panama that we need to pay attention to. But again, Panama and Greenland wouldn't hit my top 10, probably wouldn't hit my top 100 right now in terms of challenges we need to take on.
You served, as I mentioned, as Trump's defense secretary. How would you have reacted if he told you he wanted to invade Greenland, which is part of Denmark, a NATO ally, or the Panama Canal?
Surprised, of course. I mean, as was stated, Greenland, which is part of Denmark, is a longtime NATO ally. We have a very good relationship with Denmark. We actually have a U.S. military bases on Greenland at a Space Force base and a defense missile warning radar at what we used to call Thule Air Base. So we don't have any problems in terms of access or working with the folks in Greenland or Denmark. And of course, same type of relationship in Panama. That said, I think there is some credibility to be given to Trump's concerns about the Chinese in Panama. It's certainly grown over the years. You know, in 2017, Panama changed its recognition from Taiwan to China. They joined the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative in 2018. Investments in ports and bridges and rail lines increased dramatically. They own 2 of the 5 port zone concessions in Panama. So I think we should be concerned about continued growth and engagement in China. I wouldn't consider military force, but I think certainly engaging them diplomatic and economically to make sure we can push the Chinese out of Panama is something that's very important, should be considered. I might say, though, Wolf, when you look at concerns about shipping and economic security, and I think, again, that's legitimate, if we go back to the broader landscape that's happening out there in the world, Panama represents 5% of global traffic in terms of trade. The Houthis, which have cut off or reduced traffic in the Red Sea for global shipping, is at 12 to 15%. And more concerning, I think, which entails the broader focus against China, is the South China Sea, where 20 to 30% of global shipping passes through there, and yet we have standoffs happening in the Second Thomas Shoal and the Spratly Islands and other places. So again, it's a big world. Chinese influence is all over there, and I think we need to step back and take a look at the bigger issue of the Chinese strategy to usurp the United States.
Trump also made some rather noteworthy comments about Mexico earlier today, as well at that news conference. Watch and listen to this.
We're going to be changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, which has a beautiful ring that covers a lot of territory. The Gulf of America, what a beautiful name.
So is this a serious proposal from the president-elect? Why do you think he's even floating this idea?
If it comes from the president of the United States, you have to take it seriously. We have a lot of issues on the table between the United States and Mexico. I think Mexico is now our largest trading partner. That's number one. Actually, it'd probably be number two. Number one is immigration, and we're going to need to work with them very closely to cut off illegal immigration and to seal up that southern border coming from there. And that's going to take work with the Mexican government. And then, of course, the fentanyl that's killing 80,000 Americans a year, Wolf, coming up through the south, through the border. We need to work on those big issues, and I don't think we need to necessarily antagonize the Mexicans if they're even concerned about renaming the Gulf of Mexico. Again, not a top 100 issue for me as this new administration takes office on January 20th.
Former Defense Secretary Mark Esper, thanks as usual for joining us.